It's the final day of a NATO meeting in Brussels. Moments ago, Mark Rutte, Secretary General, wrapped up speaking. Right now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the podium. Let's take a listen.
And it'll make clear, begin to see real progress, or we'll have to conclude that they're not interested in peace. But let's hope they are, because I think it would be better for everyone if they are. Well, we need to hear an answer to this. I mean, we're going to have talks as long as talks are about something. They can't be talks about talks. At the end, I think initially it was important to talk because we hadn't talked to them in a long time, but now we've reached the stage where we need to make progress. And if we're not making progress towards peace, then we have a set of factors that we have to take into account. But hopefully we are going to make progress towards peace. I remain optimistic that we can. It'll be hard, it'll be difficult, but I'm optimistic that we can.
Mr. Secretary, the Myanmar earthquake, I mean, normally in these kind of events you would have up to 200 Americans with sniffer dogs, special equipment, experts in their field, saving lives on the ground. This has not happened because of the dismantling of U.S.
Well, that and the fact that it's run by a military junta that doesn't like us. So it's hard for us to move around in that country.
I'd say these events are always non-political. They went into Syria, for example, in the Turkey-Syria earthquake. So they can accept...
Well, we're not the government of the world. No, we'll provide humanitarian assistance, just like everybody else does, and we will do it the best we can. But we also have other needs we have to balance that against. We're not walking away from humanitarian assistance. But again, I go back, there's a lot of other rich countries in the world. They should all be pitching in. We're going to do our part. We already have people there. We'll have more people there. We'll help as much as we can. It's not the easiest place to work. Okay, they have a military junta that doesn't like us, doesn't necessarily allow us to operate in that country the way we wanted to. That would have impeded our response no matter what. That said, we are willing to continue to help in the humanitarian crisis. Other countries need to do so as well. China's a very rich country. India's a rich country. There are a lot of other countries in the world, and everyone should pitch in. I don't think it's fair to assume that the United States needs to continue to share the burden, 60, 70% of humanitarian aid around the world. We will be in the business of humanitarian aid, but we have other priorities as well that are national interest priorities of the United States, and we're going to align all those to be properly balanced.
Isn't it a diminution of real soft power? I mean, all of the experts in this have said the reason is not because of the politics of Myanmar, but it's because of the dismantling of USA you simply couldn't deploy.
Yeah, I don't listen to these so-called experts. There's not real experts. These are so-called experts. These are people that are part of that NGO industrial complex. No, these are people that make millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in these NGOs all over the world that stand up and they get flooded with U.S. taxpayer money, and then we have to spend $100 million to get $10 million to people. We're not doing that anymore. Okay? We have stopped. We are no longer going to spend $100 million to get $10 million to recipients. We're not going to fund these global NGOs all over the world that are living off of this. We're not doing it. We are prepared to help and work with governments and appropriate NGOs on the ground that are delivering assistance. We will be there and we will be helpful. There are a lot of other rich countries. They should also pitch in and help, and some of them are and some of them are not. But we are going to do our part. We're going to continue to do our part. But it's going to be balanced with all of the other interests we have as a country. We are not a nation. We are the richest country in the world, but our resources are not unlimited. They are not unlimited. And we have a massive national debt, and we have many other priorities as well, and it's time to recalibrate all of that. So we'll be there. We'll be helpful as much as we can. We've got other things we have to take care of as well, but we care deeply about what's happened there. And we wish we had a more cooperative government.
Mr. Secretary, the Middle East was part of your discussion here in NATO, especially that did you find support from members toward your policy of airstrikes and Houthis and your maximum pressure policy toward Iran?
Yeah, I mean, on the Houthis, everybody wants to get their ships through the Red Sea. We're the only ones doing anything about it, but everyone wants to, get their ships through there. As I said, we've done the world a great favor by taking on this band of criminals who have, unfortunately, sophisticated weaponry that they can use to, they attacked, 150, 160 merchant vessels. 174 times they've attacked the United States Navy. So I think the world should be grateful to the United States for being involved in this and doing this. Everyone thanks us for it. I understand these nations have limited capabilities despite being very rich countries. Nobody else can project power there and do this. But that said, we think that mission is going to bear fruit, and it's necessary. We can't have a band of criminals controlling that. In the case of Iran, I don't know of any country in the world that's excited about Iran ever having a nuclear weapons capability. Some are more forceful about it than others. We've had talks about that. As you know, the president would like to figure out what's going to happen there. But he's also made it clear that there's not going to be a nuclear-armed Iran. That's not going to happen under his watch.
Mr. Secretary, what's your message to foreign citizens who may be afraid to come to the United States because they're concerned about potentially being detained over some minor administrative error because they might have something on their phone like criticism of the president or of the Israel-Gaza conflict, and they don't want to come into the United States now?
No, first of all, those people that have their phones looked at and so forth, and I'll refer you to CBP to go through their processes. But generally, it's people that have been flagged coming in for a reason. I would say that if you're not coming to the United States to join a Hamas protest or to come here and tell us about how right Hamas is, or to tell us about, stir up conflict on our campuses and create riots in our street and vandalize our universities, then you have nothing to worry about. But thousands and thousands of people come into the U.S. every single day to conduct business, to travel, to do all sorts, to visit relatives. It happens every day. It's very commonplace, and nobody has a problem. I mean, if you're coming here to create problems, you're probably going to have a problem, and I think that's a good thing. If you're coming here to create problems, not here, to the United States, you're probably going to have a problem. Yeah, we're not going to continue to be stupid enough to let people into our country who are coming here to tear things up. Not going to happen.
Mr. Secretary? If you're just joining us, that was the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaking at the NATO meeting in Brussels. Joining me on the set, our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Hello to you, Doug.
How are you?
One thing that was striking, and when listening to him, is the tone of what the U.S. is doing in comparison with the rest of the world. And this is while he's making a trip trying to reassure NATO allies that the U.S. remains committed to the alliance.
And was that reassurance? Did it work? Are the Europeans reassured? Look, going to this week, the French ambassador to NATO basically said that everyone is extremely riled and over the uncertainty of Trump's foreign policy. Europe's in a sort of state of shock right now. Various levels of reeling and not quite knowing what to do. Rubio lands here. Basically, what is he going to say? And coming out of these 2 days of meetings and talks, you had Europe's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, basically saying that she was reassured on behalf of Europe about these commitments, these very explicit commitments that Rubio made, said the U.S. is not going to abandon NATO. We're active in NATO. We remain an active member, so on and so forth. And also saying that she got reassurances about that the U.S. will not make concessions to, say, Vladimir Putin on the war in Ukraine if those concessions go against the interests and the red lines of both Ukraine and Europe. So on those fronts, you could say Europe's reassured. But like I said, there are limits to the real reassurance there, because of Trump's uncertainty, because ultimately Rubio himself does not know what Donald Trump's next move is going to be. So the Europeans are basically in a situation right now where they have to operate under the assumption that even if Rubio comes to Brussels vowing, no, the U.S. is not pulling out of NATO, that's just a bunch of media hyperbole, as he said yesterday, as he phrased it. Even if he comes saying that, the Europeans have to operate under the assumption that, yes, at any moment, on a whim, Donald Trump could pull out of NATO. And what would the consequences of that be? And the Europeans, at least the Europeans, the more sober-minded among them, have few illusions that no matter how much the Europeans get their act together, it's going to take time to ramp up their defense spending to those 5% levels that Donald Trump wants. That may be unrealistic. Rutte himself, the NATO chief, spoke of perhaps levels from about 3.5 to 3.7% as being perhaps in the medium term more realistic. But the Europeans know that it's still not going to be enough, whether we're talking about Ukraine or ultimately anything, even if there's a reassurance force of European troops or some sort of troops on the ground. They will need U.S. logistics. They will need U.S. backup, i.e. security guarantees. You can't. The bottom line is the Europeans know, whether they like it or not, that NATO cannot operate effectively as a deterrent, as an alliance that can be a deterrent to potential and real adversaries unless it has the U.S. Umbrella to a greater or lesser extent. And that's right now where all the worries really are. All of these reassurances, they're fine, but they're just so many words when you have a Secretary of State who, like the other members of this cabinet, ultimately have to pay fealty to Trump and Trump's whims. And they are as much in the dark as the rest of us are on what Trump could do today, tomorrow, or the next day.
All right, Doug, thank you very much. Douglas Herbert, our International Affairs Commentator.